Hello, my friend. I want you to find a quiet moment, wrap yourself in a soft blanket, and close your eyes. Let go of the worries of the day. Inhale deeply, and as you exhale, feel your body begin to relax. Welcome to a place where time slows down and the moonlight is your guide. Tonight, we journey to a world of silent mountains and ancient forests, where every star holds a story. Prepare to drift into a land where the quietest whispers hold the most profound truths. Your journey to peaceful sleep begins now. Hearthwood Village and the endless autumn. The village of Hearthwood was a place of quiet, gentle magic. Nestled deep in a valley where the mountains sloped down to meet an ancient forest. The air there always smelled of wood smoke and damp earth. And the days were measured by the slow, peaceful rhythm of the seasons. In spring, the valley floor would burst with a million shades of green. Summer would bring a deep, lush warmth and a lazy hum of bees. Then, as the sun began to sink a little lower in the sky, autumn would arrive in a cascade of brilliant colors, fiery reds, golden yellows, and a bronze that held the memory of the sun. Finally, the trees would shed their leaves, and the land would rest under a blanket of silent, deep snow, only to be awakened by the first thaw of spring. This was the way of things, a cycle as old and as reliable as the mountains themselves. In this peaceful place lived an elderly woman named Elara. She was not a keeper of secrets or a wielder of powerful magic, but simply a keeper of the quiet ways. Her hands, wrinkled with age, were as steady as a stone, and her heart was as calm as the stillest pond. She lived in a small cottage at the very edge of the village, her windows looking out onto the great forest. She spent her days weaving baskets from willow branches, tending to a small garden of herbs, and watching the seasons turn. Her life was a gentle rhythm of its own, a simple, peaceful song. But one year, the song seemed to skip a beat. The sun began its slow descent towards winter, and the trees, as they always did, turned their leaves to fire. The air grew crisp, and the scent of fallen leaves filled the valley. The villagers of Hearthwood smiled, preparing for the quiet beauty of a deep autumn before the slumber of winter. But autumn did not end. The days grew shorter, but the air never quite reached the sharp, stinging cold of winter. The ground never hardened with frost. The leaves, instead of falling and leaving the branches bare, simply remained, clinging to their trees in a perpetual state of brilliant decay. At first, the people of Hearthwood did not mind. The endless gold and red of the forest were breathtaking, and the days were still mild. They were free from the burden of deep snows and harsh cold. But as weeks turned into months, a subtle unease began to creep into the village. The animals were confused. The squirrels, who had gathered their winter stores, now darted about with a frantic, unsure energy, burying their nuts in a ground that was not yet frozen and would never be. The great bears of the mountain, who should have been in their deep slumber, wandered the woods with a tired, restless hunger. The river, which should have been slowing to a crawl under a thin layer of ice, flowed with the same tireless, rushing energy it had in spring. The rhythm was broken. Elara felt the change more deeply than anyone. She was a woman who listened to the silence of the land, and the silence now was wrong. It was a heavy, suffocating quiet, a stillness that was not the peaceful stillness of rest, but the eerie stillness of something that had stopped breathing. The colors of the autumn leaves, once so vibrant and full of life, now felt like a desperate, clinging thing, a last, sad cry. Her heart, usually so peaceful, was filled with a growing sense of worry. She would sit at her window, watching the unchanging forest, and she would feel the land's sadness, a deep, weary sorrow that seemed to seep into the very air. One evening, the elders of Hearthwood gathered in the great hall, their faces etched with worry in the flickering firelight. "The land is troubled," one elder said, his voice a low, somber rumble. "The cycle is broken. Our trees need rest, our soil needs the cleansing cold of winter, and our animals need their long sleep. This endless autumn is a curse." Another elder, his hands trembling as he spoke, recalled a legend that had been all but forgotten. The old tales speak of the Silent Heartwood, the great, ancient tree that stands at the very center of the forest. It is said to be the keeper of the seasons, the one who holds the key to the turning of the year. If the Heartwood spirit is troubled, the land's rhythm will falter. The stories say that if its heart grows sad, it will fall into a slumber from which it can only be awakened by a gentle, truthful touch. The elders fell into a long, quiet silence. They did not know how to help the Heartwood. They were strong and wise, but they were not keepers of the old, gentle magic. It was a problem beyond their understanding, a sadness that could not be solved with axes or tools. As they sat there in their helplessness, one of the younger villagers, a man who had often seen Elara sitting quietly by her window, spoke. "There is one among us who listens to the land. One who understands its quiet truths without needing words. We should ask Elara." And so, the elders sent a messenger to Elara's cottage. She listened to the story of their worries, of the legend of the Silent Heartwood, and of their plea for help. She did not hesitate. Her heart was already in the forest, feeling its profound sorrow. "I will go," she said, her voice as calm and steady as ever. "I will find the Heartwood, and I will see what ails it. I will carry the hope of Hearthwood with me." The next morning, Elara prepared for her journey. She took only a small pouch of dried berries, a water skin, and a tiny, perfectly smooth stone she had found on the riverbank long ago. She walked to the edge of the village, where the bright, unchanging colors of the forest began, and she stepped onto the path that led into its depths. The air was unnaturally still. There was no gentle rustle of leaves, no familiar chatter of hidden creatures. The leaves under her feet made no sound. It was as if the very sound of the forest had been silenced. She walked for what felt like hours, deeper and deeper into the quiet beauty of the woods. The path was a familiar one, yet it felt alien and wrong. The trees, though their leaves were a vibrant gold, seemed to have an aura of profound weariness about them. The trunks were a little more hunched, their branches a little more still. She found a stream that should have been running with a cheerful murmur, but its water was a motionless sheet, its surface reflecting the sad, golden colors of the surrounding trees with a lifeless glare. She knelt by the bank and felt the water, and it was unnaturally warm, a dull, tepid liquid that felt more like a memory than a living thing. She continued on, her senses heightened by the strange atmosphere. She saw a young fox huddled in a patch of ferns, its bushy tail wrapped tightly around its body. The fox's eyes, usually bright with mischief, were dark and filled with a deep sadness. It did not run from her, but simply watched her pass, its head drooped as if in mourning. Elara felt a pang of sorrow in her own heart. The fox was a keeper of the forest, a spirit of the land, and its grief was a testament to the depth of the Heartwood's sorrow. She reached a clearing that was home to a family of great oak trees, their branches sprawling wide, their presence usually a source of immense comfort. But they seemed to have lost their ancient strength. Their branches hung low, their leaves a listless, pale shade of brown. They had lost the fiery gold of their neighbors, as if their spirit was tired of the show and simply wanted to rest. Elara placed her hand on the rough bark of the largest oak, and she felt a faint, sad tremor beneath her palm, a weak pulse in a body that was trying to sleep but could not. The feeling of its sadness was so overwhelming that she had to step back. She knew she was getting closer. The path, once so clear, began to grow faint, twisting and turning in strange ways. The colors of the leaves grew even brighter, an unnatural, almost desperate brilliance. The air began to hum with a low, mournful sound, a quiet song of sorrow. She realized that the forest was not just silent, it was trying to communicate its grief to her, its very essence crying out for help. She took another step, her eyes scanning the ground for any familiar landmark. She had been here many times before as a child, on quiet walks with her grandmother, and she knew the way by heart. But the way had changed. She saw a familiar moss-covered stone, a marker that should have been at the beginning of a long meadow, but it was now right at the edge of a deep, dark hollow. The forest was shifting around her, its reality bending to its sorrow. The path she knew was gone. She was now truly a stranger in a familiar land. The Heartwood was not just sad, it was lost. The world around her was a tapestry of disquiet, a landscape that had become untethered from its own truth. The familiar moss-covered stone, a landmark she knew as a child, was in the wrong place, and its presence felt like a silent, broken promise. Elara stood still, her feet rooted to the soft, damp earth, and felt the forest shift and breathe around her. It was not a malevolent presence, but a deeply sorrowful one, a living thing twisting in its grief. She took a slow, deliberate breath, drawing on the quiet patience that had always been her greatest strength. She would not be hurried by the forest's confusion. She would not be swayed by its sorrow. She would simply be a steady presence, a calm point in a world that was losing its way. She stepped off the path and began to walk in the direction her heart told her to go. The forest became a maze of impossible things, a silent, surreal landscape that seemed to bend and fold in on itself. A river of what looked like shimmering tears flowed where there should have been a sun-dappled meadow, its waters catching the faint, dull light and reflecting 1,000 sad, pale memories. Elara knelt by its bank, and for a long moment she simply watched the quiet current. She did not feel sadness, but a profound understanding. The river was filled with the forgotten tears of the forest, the tears of trees and leaves that had been shed and never truly acknowledged by the villagers. She reached down and felt the cool, lifeless liquid, and she made a silent promise to remember. A little farther on, she came to a grove of trees that was filled with a low, mournful sound. The air hummed with a soft, mournful chorus, a sound so soft it felt more like a vibration in the air than a noise. Elara listened closely, and she realized the sound was the faint, lingering echo of the laughter of children who had once played in these woods, their joy now a tired, whispered memory. The forest was holding onto these things, unable to release them, and they had become a burden, a tangled web of sorrow and regret. She did not listen to the words, but felt the profound sadness behind them, an ancient ache that echoed in the very air. She pressed on, the smooth stone in her hand, its cool, constant weight a silent comfort. The ground began to change under her feet. It felt unstable, as if she were walking on something that was not solid earth, but a thin, delicate shell. With each step, she felt a profound sense of loss, a sense of falling through a memory. This was the path of broken promises, a place where all the promises of spring and summer, the promises of new life that had been taken for granted, had gathered to weep. The air grew heavier, thick with a profound melancholy that felt like a great, shared sigh. She finally reached the center of the forest. It was not a place of light and joy, as she had always imagined, but a small, dark hollow, silent and shadowed. The air here was completely still, a vacuum of all sound and life. And in the center of the hollow, where the legendary Heartwood should have stood, was only a small, gnarled sapling. It was no taller than a child, its bark cracked and dry, its branches bare, and its leaves, which should have been a vibrant green in summer and a blazing fire in autumn, were a tired, dusty gray. Its presence was not one of strength, but of a profound, heartbreaking weariness. Elara knelt beside the small, sad tree. She had expected to find a grand, ancient being, but instead, she had found something small, vulnerable, and deeply wounded. A faint, low hum, a sound so soft it felt more like a vibration in the air than a noise, emanated from the gnarled wood. As she watched, a small, shimmering figure began to form from the air above the tree, a being made of pure, translucent light, its form a gentle, shifting outline of a figure no taller than the sapling itself. Its face was a delicate, serene mask of profound sorrow, and its eyes held the deep, weary sadness of 1,000 years. This was the Heartwood spirit, the keeper of the seasons. The spirit did not speak with words, but with a feeling that settled directly into Elara's heart. It was a feeling of deep, profound sadness, a lament for something lost. "You have come," the feeling said. "You are the first to truly see me in a long, long time. The world has grown busy, and the people of Hearthwood have become comfortable. They do not watch the turning of the seasons with their hearts anymore. They simply watch them pass with their eyes. The warmth of summer, the fire of autumn, the stillness of winter, they are no longer seen for what they are, gifts of great beauty, each with its own song. My heart has grown quiet, and I have lost the will to sing my song to the world. I am weary. I am so weary." The spirit then shared with her a deep, sad memory. It showed her the villagers' ancestors, gathered in the fields, their faces upturned to the sky as the first snow fell. They would make a small offering to the land, a handful of seeds or a drop of water, a quiet thank you for the bounty of the year, a prayer of gratitude for the rest that was to come. But over the generations, that small ritual, that quiet act of gratitude, had been forgotten. The villagers now simply saw winter as a time to stay warm by their fires, and the other seasons as a time to harvest and toil. They were living in a beautiful painting, but they had forgotten to listen to its song. The Heartwood, in its loneliness, had no song left to sing. It had simply held onto the last colors of autumn, unable to let them go, for fear that they, too, would be forgotten. Elara felt the weight of the spirit's sorrow. She knew it was true. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the small, smooth stone she had carried with her. She took the small, perfect stone and held it out to the Heartwood spirit. The spirit looked at it, its eyes filled with a gentle, questioning wonder. Elara did not speak, but she let her mind fill with all the memories of the seasons that had ever filled her heart. She thought of the bright, hopeful green of the first new leaf of spring, the way it unfurled so slowly, so perfectly. She remembered the gentle warmth of the summer sun on her face and the lazy hum of the bees in the fields, the scent of the ripe berries and the feeling of the softest grass under her bare feet. She felt the fierce, bold colors of the autumn leaves, a brilliant last dance before the quiet rest, the way the wind would carry them in a joyful, final ballet. She felt the peaceful silence of the first soft snowfall, the feeling of the world wrapped in a still, pure blanket of white. She remembered the sound of a wood fire in the winter, and the comfort of her own cottage wrapped in a soft, deep silence. She poured these memories, not with her voice, but with the quiet feeling in her heart, into the small, smooth stone. She infused it with her love for the gentle rhythm of the world, with her deep and abiding gratitude for its gifts. She held the stone in her hand, and it began to glow with a faint, warm light, a light that held a memory of all the seasons, all the colors, all the feelings. It was not a powerful, brilliant light, but a soft, steady pulse, a song of pure, simple gratitude. She then reached out with her free hand and gently placed the glowing stone in a hollow at the base of the sad, withered sapling. And for a long, long moment, nothing happened. The world remained silent, the air heavy with sorrow. Elara did not rush. She simply sat there, a silent, steady presence, her heart open, giving of its quiet hope. And then, a change came. It began as a faint, almost imperceptible warmth that spread from the stone, up the trunk of the sapling, into its bare branches. A small, gentle hum, a pure and perfect note, filled the air around them. The hum grew, a soft, rising melody that seemed to be a response, a slow, gentle awakening. The weary branches of the sapling began to straighten, to uncurl, to reach towards the sky. The dusty gray of its bark began to deepen, taking on a new life, a vibrant, living brown. The very air around them lightened, and the oppressive sadness began to lift, like a thick morning fog finally giving way to the sun. And then, with a sound like a single, perfect sigh, the endless autumn began to end. The vibrant, clinging leaves on the trees surrounding the hollow suddenly released their hold, not with a dry, rustling sound, but with a soft, final murmur, a whisper of goodbye. They spiraled slowly to the ground, a breathtaking shower of gold and crimson, and they landed with a soft, quiet rustle, covering the earth with a brilliant, final blanket of color. Elara watched as the branches were finally left bare, ready to receive the coming rest. The air grew colder, but it was a good, true cold, a clean, sharp air that smelled of snow. A single, delicate snowflake, pure and white, drifted down from the sky and landed on the back of her hand, melting in a tiny, cold kiss. Then another fell, and another, and soon, a soft, peaceful snow began to fall all around them. The world was finally being quieted, finally being tucked in for its long, peaceful slumber. The Heartwood, the keeper of the seasons, was at rest, and its spirit, now glowing with a soft, steady light, was at peace. Elara rose, her heart filled with a profound and gentle peace. She turned and began to walk back through the forest, a new path now open to her, a path that was no longer warped by sorrow. The forest was now a still, peaceful place, its branches now bare and waiting, its ground covered in a soft, white blanket. The colors were gone, but the feeling of peace was everywhere. She passed by the stream that had been so still and lifeless, and she could see now that it was beginning to freeze, a thin, crystalline layer of ice spreading across its surface, a promise of winter's deep, quiet rest. She passed by the small, sad fox, and its eyes, now that the snow had begun to fall, held a flicker of hope, a knowing understanding that the world was right again. And as she walked, a true and perfect stillness settled over the land. The turning of the year, the great, beautiful song of the seasons, was now whole once more. Elara walked on, a quiet, steady presence in a world that was now, finally, at peace. Her journey was nearly at an end, and she would return to her village, her heart holding the quiet secret of the Heartwood sorrow, a secret that would now fill the people of Hearthwood with a newfound gratitude for the simple, perfect magic of the turning year. She knew that the Heartwood sadness was a gift, a gentle reminder that they must never again take the beauty of their world for granted. For in the great, patient silence of winter, they would find not just rest, but a new, deeper appreciation for the simple, beautiful truths that held their world together. And so, the land slept, and the village with it, a perfect, peaceful harmony, a cycle restored.